the C3 podcast. Y'all know what it is, Cocktails, Code, and Conversations. I am your host, David Lee, and we are back for another episode. And of course, you guys know what I do every single time I have this pod. I tell you that all my guests are special. Now, listen, if y'all listen to the last pod, or if y'all haven't heard this pod yet, the one with Marcus Carey, because I haven't figured out exactly when I'm going to drop that one. All my guests are special. I got another special guest coming up, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to y'all, because what I've loved about doing this podcast, everybody, and is the C3 squad of y'all have followed me and kind of grown with me. Like, what I've loved about this is I've been able to get introduced to people that I don't know well. Like, when it first started, it was just people in my network, which is super cool. But now I'm starting to expand my network and have some more conversations with super cool people. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody to Miss Juliet Okafor.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jules Okafor. I'm the CEO and founder of Revolution Cyber. And much of the work we do today is centered around awareness, communications, and change management. So I've started a boutique firm focused on building out security transformation in the form of policy development, process re-engineering, and then also communications into the organization.
That is absolutely fantastic. And you have a unique perspective in the cybersecurity space because you also have a law degree, correct?
I do.
So you are, let me think, the third person on this podcast that I've interviewed. And so I find this very interesting to bring in that concept of both like law and cyber, right? And so I'd like to just kind of get your story a little bit of how you came from like law to cybersecurity and how you blend both of these together.
If I'm honest, I'll tell you, I didn't plan it. We had a recession that unfortunately required that I leave a job in market research. And I took some time off and upon deciding that I wanted to get back into work, figured out there was an MSSP, Managed Security Services Provider organization, who was looking for an account executive. And so much of my career started in sales.
Okay.
And I started selling security services and helped to both sell and implement the first SOC at the Bank of Zambia. And it's been really a roller coaster since then. And that was back in 2014.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. Look, I tell most people, and it's funny, like with this, with our current generation and kind of even a little bit of the generation behind us, right? Most of us find our way and stumble into cybersecurity, right? Because this is still very much a young, growing industry, right? We're just now starting to see, like either in schools or now with courses and boot camps where you can actually say, I want to go be into cybersecurity, and there's actual a path for you. Most of us we woke up one day, it's like, oh, is this what I've been doing? It's called cybersecurity? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So, but it's I always just find it fascinating, people's paths, right? And how they get into this industry, because while it's niche, right? But it's niche, diverse, and big all at the same time. Which when you hear that, you're like, how could it be all of those things? But it very much is, because there's so many different aspects to cybersecurity. And I always enjoy talking to people both from the tech side and also from like the policy side and things of that nature, because I think when you don't see that side, right? If you don't have a chance to either work for a vendor or, work at a large organization who really implements all these things and does it like from soup to nuts, you forget how much of that policy side, right, is important. And that's what kind of drives a lot of the things that end up happening. And so everybody wants to be like, oh, I want to be this cool hacker. It's like, great. Well, you're not going to get funding or a program to go do that unless somebody puts in the proper policy and it gets governed and it gets supported by the people who, run the business.
Yes. It always comes back to money. I think a lot of times we don't want to be honest with ourselves about that fact, in that security is enabled by someone in the organization saying, we will invest in this. Someone in the organization saying, we will sign the check. And until someone does that, it doesn't matter how great our solution, it will not get funded. It will not get done.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the thing about it, we are on the insurance side, right? When you think about it, because it's not something that a business for the most part says, okay, as I'm looking at my P&L statements, as I'm looking at things that I do and operate, right? And I've used this analogy before, right? If I bake bread, if I'm a baker, I don't care about cybersecurity. You might tell me I have to do it, but my job is to bake bread, right?
Yes.
Look at things and go, okay, what allows me to bake bread? If I'm going to go spend money, I'm going to spend money on this brand new oven that allows me to bake bread 10 times faster. I'm going to go hire this amazing chef who makes the best bread you've ever tasted. Then you come to me and tell me I got to spend how much on what to protect something. I'm going to look at that and go, that has nothing to do with me baking bread. Therefore, it falls down that list, right? And that's where, cybersecurity for the longest time has been. Now, granted, not saying it's not important. I even think now organizations do realize that it's important, but it's still being weighed based on everything else that they have from a business perspective.
I completely agree. And the analogy about it being insurance is so important because a lot of times that's when cybersecurity is actually considered, is after the fact. It's like, so we've got all this innovation, we've got a bunch of things that we need to drive change, drive the market, increase customer acquisition. And typically it's when the thing that's bad that someone told them might happen happens, that they're like, okay, so is there security in place?
Right.
It is thought of just the way you think of insurance. Do we have insurance? Are we safe? Are we protected? Are we covered? That's exactly how people think about security today.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's, from somebody who's kind of seen it from different aspects, right? So started my career kind of as a consultant and kind of doing different things. And in my background's in identity and access management, right? So I've never been like, on the network security side or the ethical side or things of that nature, but I've always had to interact with those people. But I've always been involved in the overall security architecture standpoint. So I've had to know what's going on from that point. Like we're so focused on those things, right? And saying that, we need these tools or things or these things to go and do the next greatest thing that we often forget to include the business and see how they see it.
Yes.
And it's when you do that, you get these disconnects, and that's why I'm not going to say that's why a lot of these breaches happen, but there's a crack in there where you find reasons for these breaches and things to happen because your tech folks are running one way and the business is going, okay, well, I'm just going to do enough so that my tech folks are happy and they're getting what they want, but comprehensively I haven't included this into how I run my business operations. And so I really feel like that's changing. It has been for the last couple of years. And then, we look back at SolarWinds like this, I think this was a really big kind of wake up call to a lot of people, more so than any of the breaches that happened in the past. Cause this was, kind of something down the supply chain. This is like, look, we did everything right.
Yep.
And this was a third party that we trust to go get our information from. And then that affected us, right? And it just goes to show you how, like I always say this, I was like, I don't care what you do today. If you decide to start a company, you're a cybersecurity company. Period.
That's true.
You're a technology company. Like it doesn't matter what you do. Like my perfect bread baker analogy is like, yes, you make the best bread in the world, but in today's world, like you decided to have a website or you want to interact digitally, which is especially now how the world has to work. Guess what? You're now a technology and cybersecurity company. And
what I'll tell you is that if and just similar to my own, if you're a cybersecurity company, you're also potentially a victim. I think a lot of times cybersecurity companies don't believe that they are also susceptible to the same things that their clients are. Right. And so they don't put the right technical controls in place, assuming that the amount of knowledge base they have in house, the amount of investment in product development, and maybe security built in from the beginning will reduce their chances of being targeted. And what I'll say is the more and more an organization expands its client base, the more it increases its likelihood that it will be breached. That's just the way it works. It's just a matter of numbers.
Right.
So SolarWinds was doomed to be breached. Microsoft is breached, really, and we don't hear the breaches, but they are pretty much every quarter. Mimecast was recently breached as well. It really becomes about the impact to your customer base. It also depends on what you do post-breach. That tends to be more important than what happens in the breach. It's who's your accountant, who's your PR person, who are your attorneys, what insurance do you have in place, how do you communicate that out to the organization, and then whether you already have well-established relationships with the government. Uber had a great security program in place, but they were breached. And because they were on the wrong side of the government, it was viewed incorrectly by other elements, but other agencies of the government that had control over Uber's ability to continue business. So all the things that you think about in security are directly impacted by the way the organization does business, because if there's a breach, it becomes a reason by which to shut the company down with regard to its business. And we have to all be clear there.
We still have this very kind of shameful scarlet letter, hey, you've been breached, like, what did you do wrong type of thing. And I think it's healthy for us to move this industry to where it's like, hey, yes, this happened. Here's how we're responding. Here's what we're doing next. Let's continue to talk about this and get better versus like, oh, we got breached. Let's not talk about whatever happened. Let's be so super shameful because, this is something that this industry kind of grows and changes all the time, right? New technologies come out. We find different ways to, prevent, breaches from happening. The bad guys or bad girls find another way to make the breaches happen. It's a back and forth and it's constant. And so I think that's one of the things, specifically post-breach, we've just got to, as a community, start embracing, like, not necessarily say, hey, it's okay that you got breached, but it's like, okay, it happened. What are you guys doing? Let's share, right? One of the things that I really liked, and more so I dove into it, like in the SolarWinds, is the amount of information that was coming out. Like, here's what it looked like. Here's what this was.
Yes.
Right? We'll all be learning and sharing together because this is, like I said, this is our new world that we live in now.
But I think that was different because it was a supply chain attack.
True.
And it was very clear from the beginning that multiple companies had been impacted. And what it does is, if you are one of those companies, sharing and being transparent and communicating across the board, it does reduce, the amount of friction you have with the government, because the government's always looking to figure out whether you alerted the FBI, whether you conducted yourself in the way that they recommend when organization like public breach notifications, if you follow those practices. Mm-hmm. But if you've done that and you're letting your customers know, they don't have a lot of teeth in trying to go after you. They do have to, because they have to do their jobs, but they're less likely to go after you in the ways that they have gone after companies that try to hide it. So I always recommend, and I always confront things from because of my experience, my background, a sales, legal, business professional. Cybersecurity is laid on top of all those different domains. But from my position, how do we influence the way people behave as a result? What are the lessons learned as a result of what happened to me? And then how do I reduce liability from this breach? Because we're doing the right things and we're letting the people need to know no. When you do those things across the board, I typically find organizations are able to get beyond a breach. And you'll notice that after breaches, stock prices go down, but then they also go straight back up, because that is what companies are looking to, which is about trust. Do I trust what they're saying to me? Do I trust their brand? Do I feel like I'll spend more with them? And if you can demonstrate that, you're pretty much good.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's both kind of good and bad from that perspective, because yes, like these companies bounce back and they come back and start to put in new remedies and take a going step forward. But I think I was more critical early on, like when we had like the Target and the Chase and those type of breaches, because it wasn't very clear what they did. And to your point, like it was like, okay, the stock price goes down, or the brand kind of value went down, but then it seemed like months later we're like, oh, okay, cool, like it's back again, right? And so from an aspect of like, look, yes, we have to be understanding that things are going to happen. I do like the fact that like I was saying, we get back to more transparency, right? I think early on it was like these breaches were just kind of happening. Companies were kind of saying they did some stuff, and then like all of a sudden like everything was back to normal. Like I can tell you for one, as a consumer, like when I saw like what happened with the Target breach, like I kind of stopped shopping at Target, and I was like, I'm really not sure, like, because I didn't see a lot of what they did. It was it was a third party breach, all that stuff, whatever. I saw kind of how it went down, but I was like, there wasn't a whole lot of information. Okay, well, what did you do to make this any better? Like, how do I know that this isn't going to happen again? Like, I'm just supposed to come back and trust you. Now, granted, I realize I'm different than the average consumer. This is, I live and breathe this every day, so I'm paying a little bit more attention than the average person. But it's that type of thing, and I think Experian kind of experienced a lot of this too, where it was just like people were just kind of like, Granted, we don't really have much choice with Experian, right? Like, I can't
Yes.
not choose you. Like, you just kind of still exist, which that's a whole different topic that I will get into one day. But so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about Revolution Cyber and just kind of some of the things that you all do there.
Okay.
So first one, general question, like just what in general does Revolution Cyber do?
So what I'll say is that it's a two-pronged answer. So when Revolution Cyber started, we started back in February of 2019. We were a security and awareness services company focused on integrating technology, process, and people in order to reduce risk associated with users. We started there, and we developed relationships and client engagements with like GE Aviation, Bank of America, some really notable names, and then also really small customers who many people won't be able to identify. Today, and we'll say yada yada yada. 2021 February, which is 2 years later. In fact, we celebrated our 2-year anniversary last week. We are an organization that's built on being a catalyst for culture change within cybersecurity organizations. What organizations are using our services to do is to 5 things. One, it's education. So we help to educate users, executives, and stakeholders about the value and the importance of cybersecurity. Secondly, it's about experience. We're helping organizations, cybersecurity organizations, to increase the positivity of the experience that users have with security initiatives. Most of the initiatives are rolled out, and very painfully so, and it turns users off. So we're designing programs to reduce that friction and the pain associated there. Third is engagement. So we are all about communicating into the organization, targeting the people we communicate with, building stories around messaging that security wants to tell. And they're also about bringing stories and messaging back. So we communicate back to the security team what they may not know about what users want, need, and how they're impacted by what security is doing. The fourth area is enablement. We're all about automation and integration of various areas of the business in order to allow for collaboration between security and organization. One area that we see this with is SSO, MFA, IAM rollouts. We are working with vendors like Microsoft, Varonis, Digital Guardian, to get data points about where risk exists in the organization, get a sense of what parts of the organization are sharing data that they may not know that they're sharing. They're leaking it into onto the internet or places that are not permitted to see the information. And then what we'll do is work with the security team to design a rollout that is automated through the organization, communicates through the organization, and enables the results. So we focus on adoption of whatever policies around those areas. And then fifth would be for us effectiveness. So it's one thing to put an awareness program in place. It's one thing to put password managers in place, but are they effectively delivering the result? So we will design user surveys. We'll do feedback groups. We'll do focus groups. And our job is to create metrics and KPIs and OKRs that dictate to us exactly what's happening, how it's been happening, and who we need to go to in order to ensure the result that we're looking for. So much of what we do is outcomes based. That's a lot of what our organization does. In the end, we know that we're doing what we intend to do if we can prove that we've driven change in the way the organization views the security team, engages the security team, or reacts to them, ultimately.
Wow, that is, number one, that's comprehensive and just awesome that it's that you guys are attacking it from that standpoint, because there's like haven't had to deliver security solutions before, right? So I've been in the vendor side, like, right, like
Yes.
It's always so frustrating, right?
Yes.
To go through like all this hard work and implement this rollout, whatever it is, right? Pick a software, it doesn't freaking matter, right? You roll it out, and like I've just been on that side where I'm constantly telling the business owners, stakeholders, like, look, okay, this is like a third of the battle, right? Like this is the easy part.
Yes.
Like, rolled it out, but you've got to get user adoption. You've got to make sure that users understand how to use it, what's going on. Like there's like there's like a whole campaign that needs to roll out with it. And then what I loved about what you guys do is the effectiveness. Okay, you rolled it out. What happened? Are we measuring something? I love the OKRs. I love the OKRs. That is so awesome because now you can start to look and see, okay, we rolled this out. And it's not just to check the box. Oh yeah, we did it.
Yep.
Rolled out, Veronis. Woohoo, yay. Like, no, we rolled out Veronis and what we saw before. Here's what we saw after. Here's what's going on. Here's how people are thinking about it. Here's how people are using it. Because here's something that I think is critical that we missed, right? And as sometimes as the tech side of cybersecurity professionals, we miss this because we're so used to dealing with other tech professionals that we speak the same language, right? If you roll something out and the user doesn't understand it, or even worse, doesn't like it, you know what they're going to do? Not use it.
Ignore it. Yeah.
Find a way to get around.
Find a way around it. Yes.
Right? All of a sudden, I used to be able to go here and it does this thing. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna slack my buddy in IT, ask them like, hey, I'm gonna find some way to work around it.
That's it.
Right? And that's not what we want the users to do because it's there for a reason. But again, they don't understand that. They just know I logged in one day it was this, I logged in the next day is that.
We call that the stupid user fallacy, right? Because the fallacy security teams believe it's a myth that users are stupid. No, users are human. Humans are smart. And humans will say, this actually slows me down. Let me do something or find a way around this thing. And it's, we're going to be fighting history of humans getting over and innovating. Because what that is innovation. They'll see what you're providing and go, let me come up with my own solution to solve a problem I continue to have that you haven't solved.
Right.
So what you need to do is anticipate the problems people are having, which means security teams need to understand truly what the business is trying to accomplish. And then they need to say, with limited resources, this is what we'll give you. It's a technology solution that doesn't solve all your problems. Here are the other ways that we think that we can help you. But what I want you to do, when you find that this is a challenge, come back to us so we can figure out another solution. What security teams is, they don't do this. What they do is say, here's what we give you. And because it secures you, you should do it. And that's not enough. You've got to do more than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Use this. Why? Because it's security. Okay.
Yes. And what that doesn't impact my bonus, my salary, and I'm not getting paid to do security for you. You need to figure out how to do security for you.
And then what it does is it creates this very adversarial relationship between security and the user. Right?
Yes. And I talk all the time about frictionless security. And when I say frictionless security, I mean, that's the goal. That's utopia. Ideally, security shouldn't create friction, but it does. And what I'm finding, security teams sometimes create it by design. They wanted to create friction to establish control and dominance, which is a bad idea. Yes. Like you proving that you're smarter than the business is a bad idea because they'll just cut security and keep moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, quick pause. We're going to come back, more conversation right after this. Hey everybody, back again to tell you about the Jumpstart Awards. This is an amazing program sponsored between On the Corner Media and Uber Ether to start to give back to the community and help some individuals transition into the IT or cybersecurity space. You can check out all the details at onthecorner.us/jumpstartawards. But basically, look, here's the deal. You get a chance to get access to Coursera.org for free for a full year. 3 lucky participants will get a full year's access. The 3 other participants will get 6 months access. And this is also, you can get access to the training you need to help jumpstart your way into an IT or cybersecurity field. So head to www.onthecorner.us/jumpstartawards to find out more information. And right now, let's get back to the pod. Okay, we're back. So I want to throw this kind of, it's kind of an idea and kind of a question at the same time. But so we talked about, you brought up that aspect of frictionless security, right? And I think one of the things that, especially on the enterprise side, right, that security teams and most tech people are just so used to is that their users don't have a choice. So it's not like on the B2C side, right? Because if I'm a consumer and I go somewhere and I don't like a website or I don't like a service that's being offered, I'll just go choose someplace else to go. Enterprise users don't really have that choice. And so I think that's made, I would say IT and security teams a little lazy is the word I want to use, and because I can't think of a better one, but just the fact that they don't have to consider that, right? It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Not work here anymore, right? And so
Yep.
we don't get that consideration, and so we get a lot of this. So, but I think it's changing a little bit, right? As I'm starting to hear more and more about, uh, at least like usability and things of that nature. We're starting to think about we got product managers now. They're starting to think about how their products are actually received in the hands of the user. And then we've got companies like Revolution Cyber, which I love everything that you guys do. Those 5 steps are just absolutely fantastic. And I hope that more and more companies start to, go through this and utilize these tactics. And again, but it comes back to our first discussion, right? Just that whole insurance thing, right?
Yep.
We got to force them to get to the lake in the first place just to take a drink. And now it's like, what? Now you got to tell me I got to do more stuff. It's like, yes, you got to keep doing this. But hopefully we start to get more and more companies doing that.
Yeah, well, part of this journey with Revolution Cyber started on an engagement with a really large global cruise line. I think it's one of the largest,
Mm-hmm.
and the concern it really was about a number of people getting around the table and saying, how do we integrate security into a business that cannot stop running? It's got to keep going. But we need to understand what our risk is so that we can um, bolt on security to something that's already in the air. It's like building a plane while it's flying. We had to do that. So I think that part of what's not happening is that CISOs are hiring for talent that their mindset, because certificates say, degree programs say, and bad habits say, we've got to stop it. And the business has to understand the importance of stopping it to build good security, as opposed to saying, what would we build if we knew that we had to keep the business growing while we did it? And then having discussions, collaboration, brainstorming around that. That's not the mindset that's insecurity. So you've got to tap into mindsets not insecurity to start to think that way. My background is sales, which in order to make a sale, you can't stop the person buying. The buyer has to be able to buy while they're doing their job. So you work around them. Secondly, marketing. Marketing has to enable what's already happening. It's got to help grow the thing. So that's also part of it. And then as an attorney, you've got to figure out a way to tell a story in a way that convinces people who could care less about what it is you're telling them to make a decision. All those things combined make it so that the combination of my skill sets enable me to say, okay, this is a new problem. We've got to secure the business while it's running. In fact, it's got to grow to be able to pay for what I'm asking them to do. That most organizations don't have those people in-house. Now they're bringing on consultants, unfortunately, who were formerly of large organizations who had the old way of thinking. So we need to invite people from outside our industry to really help us solve a problem that if we don't address, will continue to grow. And that's what I'm seeing. And it's my mandate with Revolution Cyber is I want to have an apprenticeship program, internship program. I want to invite the brightest minds from law, marketing, sales, psychology. And then we're also working with a number of people in data analytics and behavioral science who can break down the data to tell a story that I don't think security people want to hear. I think it's there, data's there. I don't think they're putting it together to actually tell a story.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to I want to dive into the apprenticeship program that you have, and,
Sure.
and the reason why is I'm really I'm part of an organization. It's called ID Pro.
Yep.
It's for identity professionals, right? As we're trying to, first of all, get a collection of all the professionals for identity access management kind of together, and we're coming up with a body of knowledge of these things or whatever. And of course, most of these organizations, what happens, right? We want to do some kind of certification program.
Yep.
Well, one of the things that I brought up to the group was like, hey, like we should. We just look at like some kind of apprenticeship program, right? Because I'm looking at cybersecurity and what's happened, right? And we've got all these boot camps, all these places, and all these courses, and all these certificates, right? And it's like it's becoming an alphabet soup of just madness, right?
Yes.
And for the people that are in it on the other side, I'm about to get like really real right now. It's like we know that for most of this is bullshit. Like,
yeah.
okay,
That's true.
go run and take all these certifications. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna send you in a loop and go get your CSSP and this and this and this and put whatever letters you want to put in front of it. We're gonna charge you thousands of dollars to go get it and go through these boot camps or whatever. And all that does is literally so the filter for the recruiter, you meet that filter so you can get in. Right? Because most of the times when they come up with these job descriptions, you have an overworked manager who doesn't have enough people to get the job done. So the recruiter asks them, what do you need? And they say, I need all these things or whatever. And so you end up getting a freaking purple unicorn. And so people go out looking for this purple unicorn and they think, I got to go get all these things to get in. Or they go, we've got a lot of people out here saying, oh, go get these certificates, you'll get a 6-figure job. And so I got the certificate. Why don't I have a job? Right. And so I say all of that to say it's like part of the thing that's missing, right, especially in this industry, it's more so needed than any other one, is like we need like true apprenticeship. It's like, hey, go to a boot camp and go get your whatever. I don't care. Pick the cert that you want. But that cert doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to actually freaking use it, because this thing moves so fast and things change every day that I don't care if you know the theory behind how to use a tool. I need to know when an incident actually happens. Do you know the proper place to go do the incident report? Do you know how to go do the investigation? Do you know how to turn around and, configure the system to go find out what happened and configure so it doesn't happen? Like, I need to know if you actually know how to do these things, right? And so one of the things I'm preaching is like, we need to have an apprenticeship program where it's like, you're learning it, and let's put you in a position where you can go learn by doing, right? And then go all the way through so you can work into an actual position. So sorry, this ended up being a very long-winded question because I went on a rant, but I'd like to hear more about like the apprenticeship program that you have going on.
So I guess I'll start by saying this. Law school teaches you how to think. It does not necessarily prepare you for the law practice. And what I'll say is, the purpose of an experience through apprenticeship or internship is to prepare you how to think through a problem, not necessarily to put you in all the situations you might need to be in to succeed in a job. So when I created the apprenticeship that I created, the idea was to find people who were interested in the opportunity, who had a high work ethic, but also were looking curious and wanted to figure out how to solve problems. So what we didn't do is throw answers in the lap. What we did, it was throw questions in the lap and see how they solved them. So stepping back, I think the most important thing you can bring to the security industry is a desire to learn continuously, because that is what the job is, but also to continue to find answers where there are none. So where we are with what we've done, even with what work I'm doing, even now in our consultants are doing IM, we learned that in the process of working with a client, we work with password management, password fortification. During that, because IAM, password fortification, MFA, SSO, they really all talk about the area of trust. So as we expanded into one area, we needed to understand other areas. What we needed our consultants to do was to explore, research, analyze, and come back with insights on what things we needed to be doing in the area of IAM, incident response, and other things that maybe we didn't even know were issues.
Right.
So the challenge is that our security framework is preparing people to be given the answers. So certifications assume that if you do the certification, you will get a job. It assumes that if you take a certification, you will know the answers. It does not prepare you in the way that I was prepared in law school. We will tell you how to think when multiple things are thrown at you. We can't prepare you for every situation that comes, but you'll be prepared mentally for what challenges you face.
Right.
That is how people should view internships and apprenticeships. It is not about how easy did the company make it for me. It's about how did I develop in the role, and as things were thrown at me, how did I react, and did I get better over time? And that's why we bring on apprenticeship. A lot of people don't last, and then there are others who progress really quickly. And our goal is to throw people in head first, because if you do it here and you fail and then you get better, it's better than getting to a client who's paying you a huge salary and you fail. You will be fired. Security is like that. You're either winning or you're not winning, and everyone's a scapegoat. So you have to learn with people who will support you and guide you in a situation where it's kind of expected, then jumping in and saying, I want to make the high salary, I want to get all the recognition without having failed first. And I think that's the goal for apprenticeships and internships that we develop in the industry.
That's awesome. And that's, you know what, you hit on another topic that I love to talk about, right? Is you've got to, two things, you've got to be curious in this industry, but also too, like learning how to like fail and then keep moving forward, right? I find it so interesting that like this entire, when you look at cybersecurity, right, the entire thing is based around, I am trying to figure out how, I'm trying to reverse engineer something. I'm trying to figure out how something works. Because I either want to get into it, or then if I want to protect it, I need to understand what it is so I can put in the things to protect it. But like the quote unquote best of us in this field, we just have that curiosity to figure out how to take something apart. How do I get to it? Like, it's not. I say it's that mindset because you hit on something when you were talking about in law school, right? What I've always enjoyed about the aspect of law school, because I wanted to be a lawyer before I went to computer science. But I looked at it, I was like, I don't want to be in school that long. So I'm good. But I'm always fascinated because to me, like the study of law, right? It's really just, I look at it, it's language, understanding how to research, and then like crafting a story to convince. But I'm convincing you based off of facts that I go down to. So to me, it's almost just like it's logic and things that you see in math. It's like if I know that A plus B equals C, that's a fact and known. I can build anything on top of that, right? So if A plus B equals C, then D plus A by association equals, you know what I mean?
That's it.
To me, that's all law was. It was like understanding all these things, how they come together, and crafting them to be able to say, like, here's a story I want to tell. And I feel like, and I could be, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. My best friend is though, but like, what helps you is that mindset of like, here's this case that I have. And so I need to take it from this case in reality and break it down to what I know is fact, which is law. So I'm breaking down certain components and saying, all right, this kind of backs down the law. It's the same thing in cybersecurity. Here's just what I need to do. I need to break down the raw components and understand what this is. And so it's that type of thinking and mindset. That's why it's so open for people to get in. And I think why I'm kind of railing against this whole certificate chasing industry, not that I think they're all bad, but it's like you're setting the wrong message, right? It's not about going to get a certificate. We need to teach you how to think. Do you have that mindset? Because I've met people with philosophy degrees who are the best freaking scripters and security professionals I've ever met in my life.
And what you'll see is like Bruce Schneider. He's one of the OGs in security, and he's a philosopher, in that he's able to see connections and patterns in things, and then he comes up with rules that essentially, if he follows, makes it so he's confident in his decisions. If you think about law and you think about kind of the idea of jurisprudence and how you argue a case, if you follow a logical set of criteria to get to your result, whether the result is right or wrong, your confidence in it is really what makes you a great attorney, because you know you did the procedural things you needed to do to get there. And so you can stand behind whatever decision you make. I do the same thing in cybersecurity. I do not expect that every answer I give is correct. But if I've gone through a logical thought process to get there based on the facts available at the time, then I'm okay whether I'm right or wrong. If it turns out that what I did led to a breach, but I can justify why I made the decision, I'm okay. Similar to if I'd made the right decision, the wrong decision, and in luck it turned out that everything came out okay. That's why lawyers actually, that's the value of being a legal mind, is that it's not about whether the answer is right or wrong. It really is about the process you use to get there. We need to train security experts to go through a process, and we need to understand what that process should be. But I think that we need to create more security people who think critically rather than, I got this cert, so now I'm an expert. And that's our problem as an industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to shift topics. This is one that I deal with and talk about a lot in this podcast, and I love to get different people's opinion on it. So, obviously with the backdrop of last year in 2020, right, diversity and inclusion became a really big topic, even though it's been a big topic for a while, but obviously, right, the happenings of last year kind of put an extra light onto it. So in your eyes, when you look at diversity and inclusion from a cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity field, like what's your take on it? What do you see? What are some of the areas you're like, this is where I think we could do better?
I would say DE&I is a mirage. Don't run towards it.
Okay.
Quite literally, the thing is, I think that there are people in our industry who've understood that discussing the ideology of diversity and inclusion communicates something about them that is attractive to the market. I don't think everyone's as committed as they said.
Facts.
Yeah. And so I've partially created much of my network on calling people out about it, but not in very direct, kind of abrasive ways, but really saying, I've got this candidate. They are amazing, Black female or neurodiverse or disabled or LGBTQ, or I basically call people to the carpet privately and say, you said you got this opening. I've got a great candidate. Put them through your process and seeing whether they'll respond or not. And most privately, they do one of three things. One, they say, sure, send me their information, and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
Two, they put them through the process and increase the barriers to get in for them specifically. And I will also know people who are not one of those people who get into the system and it's like, yeah, just waiting for them to get back to me. Oh wait, what was your interview like? Oh, I met with one person. They said they would, that they would like me and wanted to get back to me. Whereas I know the person I introduced to them, despite their qualifications, 3 interviews, 3-hour-long interview, 5 panel interviews, and they're like making them run through this course. So I've seen that. And the third and final thing that they do is that they accept the candidate. I'll make a connection via email, and then they put them through the same standard process designed to filter them out. I'm so about diversity and inclusion that I'm at the point where I'm like, I want people to put their money where the mouth is.
Right.
For the ICMCP, which I worked with for about 5 years, I was the principal a sponsor person. I went out and got money from corporations in order to hire people, in order to provide professional development for Black and brown people. I did it year after year, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, well, will you hire somebody? And it's a no. So where I sit with D&I is you really truly believe in it. Let's look into your organization, hire some people. I'm not saying that I'm a great arbiter of whether somebody is or is not qualified or meets your qualification for fitness, not technically, because I can do that. Fitness right. For what you're saying culturally you require. What I'll tell you though is I'm almost certain that I'm mostly there because I also got years over years of accolades at Yahoo Hot Jobs for matching people with candidates that didn't make sense. So I have the skill set, but are you willing to consider them? Are you willing to really say, I may have some biases that may make it so that I'm not considering them in the light that they should be seen.
Yep. And
I'm willing to lower those barriers. And most people are not. They don't want to confront that.
Yeah. It's, part of the conversations that I've been having, some on this podcast, really just, more connected with different folks in Office, is that what really got to me last year was the audacity of some of these companies' responses. Like, okay, like now all of a sudden you're going to change your logo to be Black? Like, what is this? Right? It just, okay, so you want to say the right things and you want to step up, but like, what are you actually doing? Right? Like, we don't need you to change your logo color. Right? We need you to make sure that there is a safe environment for people to come in, that you don't create extra barriers for them to get into the job. And then when they actually get there, that they actually feel comfortable and
Yes.
respected and can grow in this space. Because the other thing that I point out to all the time is, it's easy to point at some numbers and go, okay, we'll go hire 200 more this or 400 more this or increase by this percentage. Okay, cool. But let's look at the back door. You increased your percentage by 6%. Yay. But then how long are they staying? Are
Yep.
they, right? And so it's very much to this point now where, and even at my, my place of work now, I've been very, passionate about saying, it's like, guys, like, let's not say anything that we're not going to be about. Period. Right? Like this is not about, like, eyes are now watching, right? We are now, there's a lot of people paying very close attention, and we've got a generation who's learned how to read through the bullshit. Like we know what a PR release is when we see one.
Yep.
Because you can say all the stuff that you want, but then I can go to your website and go look at your About Us page or your page and go see the pictures of what looks like one white man throughout his life. Here he's at 20, at 30, at 45, at 50. Like it's all the same. And so, I'm thankful for organizations and people like Larry Whiteside and ICMCP, and there's other organizations that are out there that are creating the spaces. And now I think it's time for us to start pushing, right? And start to hold these companies to some kind of accountability for some of the things that they say. One of the things that I looked at the end of the year is I saw a lot of companies put out their diversity reports, which I was like, okay, look, first step is putting it out there and putting out the numbers. Okay, your numbers suck. We all know that. This is something we already knew. But now it's time for, I think, us as an industry to start holding these companies to the fire for these reports and going, okay, year over year, just like we hold them accountable for their profit before, every quarter where we're like, oh, you're going 46% year over year this year. Great, right? But let's go look at the other ones that matters, because, I've said it before, like it's unexcusable for an industry who prides itself on innovation that this is a problem that we just refuse to solve, that we can't innovate a way to solve. Like I feel like that there's no room for that. But
I mean, quite literally. And I agree with you completely. What I'll say is pretty direct. So a few things. One, any problem that is a financial problem is easily solved by companies, corporations, enterprises. If it will cause a reduction in the amount of revenue they sustain, it will be solved immediately. Until it's painful in the wallet, we will not see changes with regard to cybersecurity hiring across the spectrum in the industry. So that's number one. Two, I've seen a growing crop of race forward organizations, predominantly Black, brown, designed to address systemic issues in the industry related to diversity and inclusion. They have not proven successful for many reasons, and happy to have another conversation about that. But there are just a lot of organizations, because of the nature of the industry and having to be a nonprofit soliciting funds from the same industry, reduce innately the effectiveness of an organization to really combat the problem. And so that's one of the things I've seen over and over again, no matter what new organization is formed. What I'll say is I worked as a recruiter on a recruitment team built by the United Nations Special Fund in 2011 on behalf of NASA to increase the amount of diversity candidates in the talent pipeline within NASA internships. I went from HBCU to HBCU, visited 20 in 6 months, was on site at career fairs in order to get people to apply to the NASA programs. We had tremendous success in that program year over year. And what NASA found was that there was truly a talent population within the HBCUs. What the HBCUs found is that they had a willing participant and collaborator in the success of their students. And years later, I'm still developing relationships and finding people who went through that program who can't help but be thankful for having gone through that for the trajectory of their career.
Amazing.
There are definite models that exist for ICMCPs of the world, Blacks in Cybersecurity, Black Cybersecurity Association, if they want to actually help solve a problem. But I was a part of, in 2011, an initiative when NASA set out and spent the money to solve a problem, and it can be solved. We just have to commit ourselves to it. And that's number 2. Number 3 is that all charities, all ideas, all concepts, all initiatives require funding.
Yeah.
And so we must figure out new ways by which to get the sources, maybe crowdsourcing funds, maybe getting money from professionals in the industry to create that, maybe charging just a small fee to candidates looking to get in. But we've got to change our revenue source in order for us to change the narrative and the results. Because until we stop asking the big companies, these security companies, who may have a stake in things remaining the same, we can't change the end result.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's I want to do one thing. We're gonna take one last break, and then we're gonna get to the last segment of the podcast. But I do want to so I'm very interested in the NASA the program that you're a part of. So like after this, I'd love to get information about that. I just want to go research for myself because I'm a nerd, right? So, the other part of me so there was a part that wanted to be a lawyer, computer science, and there was a tiny part wanted to be an astronaut at one point, but that's because I with the NASA shuttle. I just thought it was so cool. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back to the final segment, the world famous segment. It's called The Last Sip. We're going to get to it right after this. Okay, so this last segment is actually called The Last Sip. So I ask every single guest this question. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's deep. So, if you had asked me that when I was 19, I would say that I want to be remembered for having contributed in some important way to society. And I wanted a lot of people to be at my funeral. What I'll say at my big age, I'm 40, because I'm Nigerian, so our big age, is that I want to have developed the next generation of leaders, regardless of what it is they're doing. I want to be a part of whatever is the future looking like, but I've set up enough people to take advantage of that as possible that are Black and brown.
Awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's, partly because it connects a little bit with the same type of thing that I want to do in helping kind of this next generation of leaders and this generation behind us to, kind of believe in and elevate their voice. So happy to hear that. And look, I think you're well on your way. I know I say that to a lot of my guests, but it's because I always ask everybody this question because I feel like it's one that causes you to really think and just kind of measure, your actions and where you're at and where you want to go. I think it's important to be intentional in life. So, so with that, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank you for coming onto the pod today. This has been a great conversation. I'm so glad. And we're going to, 2 topics I already know that kind of spun off. I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to have to talk to her about that. But thanks so much for taking time. So I'm going to give you the floor for the last couple of minutes where people can reach you. Shout out to or any things that you got coming up lately.
Sure. So yeah, thank you so much, David. This was an amazing conversation. But as the CEO and founder of Revolution Cyber, I just want people who are interested and really motivated to make a change and an impact in cybersecurity, to reach out to me. I'm very active on Twitter at Rev Cybersec or at Jules MGMT on Twitter. But on LinkedIn, I'm Juliet Okafor. So please feel free to reach out. I get notes all the time. And I'm also open to mentorship. What I'll say is that I believe mentorships are mutual. They are bi-directional. And what I want to do is find candidates who I can motivate, who are willing to do the work. And when I mentor, I believe in sponsorship. So every mentor that I've ever had, I've also helped to get jobs in cyber. And so I'm very deliberate about those relationships. So if you're willing to do the work, like I said, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then also on IG, I'm at Jules MGMT as well. So looking forward to meeting you guys. I hope that you guys are, building an amazing career. But if not, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to connect you with whom I know or to connect myself as well.
There you go. C3 Squad, if you're listening, you got it. All right. So everybody, to the next cocktail, to the next conversation. Y'all stay safe out there.
Cocktails, Code, and Conversation is brought to you by the On the Corner Media Group. Check us out at onthecorner.us for more great content.